So first of all, I'm like really excited and happy that we can talk again. Like I really enjoyed the
That was
first
good.
time.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
even though like well, it's not published, I liked it a lot.
Sure.
So so good to have that conversation, and I start like from very brief introduction by my side, and then I let you fully introduce yourself.
Sure.
So I know you as a founder and inventor of like Complete Regenesis, and the guy who's like really preparing very vast toolbox for approaching human body. The toolbox that, from my understanding, comes more for like making the internal map first. Like it's like divided, like partly by understanding how the human body relates to itself in movement. But second of all, it's just basically if you don't feel it, if you don't really get that map like inside you, it won't work for you. And and in my understanding, that's like very solid fundament for any movement and any training you would like to do. So I know you also like wrote one book. You're on your way to write another one. You already doing like some international courses. You prepared some pretty large library of like online courses, and you keep on going with that one. So I'm like fan of your work, and I'm like very excited like to hear more insight about like your work and where does it come from. So I'll let you talk right now and like finish the introduction
Yeah.
like from your side.
Where did Complete Regenesis, where did it start? I mean, um, maybe break down a piece for me here, like where, as in back into that. Um, I started this, I mean, ultimately for people to understand where the start point was going to be. It was like sometimes when you go into things like the map, the terrain is so vast and there's so many complicated ways of approaching something that actually needs to be quite simple at the origin. People have got a limited amount of bandwidth when they first start to begin with things. You almost have to treat it like you're coming into something that people don't understand, right? It's like when you start using anatomy, most people are gone because they have no idea how to academically break down the body in terms of anatomy. And what I mean by that is actually like academic musculature function, length, tension, this muscle name, that muscle function. It's too much for most people that have no idea which is front or back, left or right in their body to comprehend how they're going to figure out what's going on with themselves. Right. So you got to learn how to communicate to someone where they can at least have a point of reference. Right. And so uh, I started well, I mean, I've been working in the coaching industry for a while now, for a good part of a decade. And, not unofficially a bit more than that, just as a prior interest and hobby, before that, with being in sports and athletics as well. And I just noticed, you start to see patterns and realize that like sometimes your own, I might say, standard of quality of work. And I think that's really important to understand that like you have to hold yourself in a standard of work to gauge whether or not like you're doing the job that you're setting out to do. I just realized I'm not really delivering uh the concepts very well here, and we're not getting the results that I'm that these people need, to the quality that they need. Half the time, they don't know what type of quality that they need. So it's up to you to judge that to begin with, and like you go, this is where you need to be, so that you're not experiencing what you are. And I might say that like most people that have come to me have always been in a case of where they're experiencing a lot of pain or discomfort, right? So they kind of got to know why it's there, but at the same time, they have to comprehensively understand how to get themselves out of this. right? So I don't know if you've experienced the same thing in that manner where the language is incomprehensible to them, right?
Yeah, like I experienced that. Like that's hmm. Especially when people are like in pain and they're like in pain for a long time and they basically are wear off by that pain. They don't
Hmm.
have like big capacity for new things. So you have to
No.
be very specific and direct. Like you have to bring really a lot information, a lot
Hmm.
knowledge in very little language. Yeah.
Exactly. It has to be quite pinpointed that someone to create a reference with them. They have to be, and that's the communication part. The understanding and communication kind of go hand in hand together, right? If they can't comprehend at least the concept, they're not going to understand. So, understanding that you mention a group of muscles and you can see them tune out. They're like, oh, another one of these people. I've been to so many physios and osteopaths and whatever else that are very knowledgeable, but I don't understand it. I don't
Hmm.
understand this language, right? I mean, these guys have gone to school for 5 to 10 years to do this, and they're speaking to me like I should have been here for 5 to 10 years to understand this. There's no common ground, right?
Yeah.
So I I learned to try and socially connect to people and understand how to ask better questions so that I could understand where they were at, so so through that would be going, what is your movement history? What is your work history? What was your favorite subject in school? If it was a science, which science was it? It allowed me to start thinking, oh, this person likes physics. I can communicate through them in that language. This person was a mechanic or a chef or a sports person. Oh, they played tennis. They understand how to develop force and meet timing. They know how to propriocept. So that forms a way for me to be able to like, okay, this is how we're going to do this. When this happens in your shot to test, this is exactly where you're mistimed into this in your body. This is where the disruption is. You're late to the hit. Oh, I get that. So how are we going to fix this? I'm like, well, we just have to practice having things and loading it up early, right? So instead of, I'm like, just do what you're doing, just do it earlier. Does that feel better? Yes, right? So that was the framework that I kind of worked with in terms of communicating with people. My investment time and their investment time was to building this understanding first, right? So with experience of being able to do that with hundreds of people, I was like, okay, well, let me try my best to understand what might be simple in terms of a program for people to enter into. And I learned, I'm like, I can't really even mention muscles here because like the second muscle's in, it's like gone, right? So I was very careful about the way I communicated how people were meant to start their journey, or in many cases, it's, a regenesis, like a restart of their journey. It's like a re-understanding. And that's like the challenging bit is to enter this with a bowl so that you can take some of the information in, right? And that's the important part is that someone has to be ready to arrive with a bowl to kind of going, I'm ready for something different to what I've been doing because I've tried a bunch of stuff
Mm.
and
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure, you know.
Yeah, I was just curious, like, what do you see is like common ground for those people that are ready to try something different? Like, what they had to
Oh,
been through.
in most cases they've been physically like zeroed out, like they're at a point where now a knife is about to go in you and you're realizing that that's not something that you see as something that you want to go down, right? And it's like, or it's middle age where the lower back is like gone, right? Or shoulders had 2 surgeries or cortisol's not worked anymore. But usually it's a case where it's like the pain doctor is usually the one that drags them into this field, right? Very rarely, I'd like to say maybe in the future when things are more established, we'll get people that aren't broken but want to perform better, right? I have a few that have come through, and that's been nicely refreshing to have people that are like, I see that you can improve my movement. I'm already quite elite, but I'm happy to try and grasp the extra like 1 or 2% to get ahead of my game. You know what I mean? And when you work with people like that, they're already very like KQ intelligent. And you just look for the certain things. I'm like, oh, you'll be fine. I don't need to cue you through different things, but just try this thing. And they run with that concept. I'm like, now try and apply it across your board and you'll kill it, you know? So a lot of those times, like these people are more intelligent than us as trainers, right? You just have to observe
Mm-hmm.
them going, they don't know how to communicate it, but when you have a lens to be able to see what their body communication and intelligence is like, you learn from them. You're like, oh, I didn't, now I've learned how to do this, and now you've shown me that, like, this is where this is going to fit in, you know?
Third perspective, first person perspective, basically for them. Yeah, with
Yeah,
right
exactly.
language to communicate.
Yeah.
And if like so, if you are about to describe like the basis of complete regenesis, the basic concept,
Yeah.
like you were about to do it like for 5 years old kid,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
can you do it right now?
The basis for complete regenesis is understanding. Let make it simple. It's like the letter A in your alphabet, because we're learning it along that way, right? Is A is like tuning into understanding what your skeletal structure is. And I'm saying this literally like as in bones, like not for many people that you guys are tuning in for the first time. It's like just mapping where your bones are, what you can touch, and understanding first, understanding and having attention that it's there, right? Secondly, what what positions of your bones, tuning into where they are, what they do for the rest of your body as a systemic like whole, as a holistic system. So it's like kind of taking a sidestep away from just muscles and tissue and fascia, which is part of that system, but one gets more attention priority than the other, right? So instead of looking at contractile like tension in a bicep where you're just constantly doing this, it's like, well, what bones do I have to think about bringing together? So posturally, this is important to put as this is like this is B in the alphabet, right? All right, Mr. 5-year-old, this is like the skeleton. Now we're going to go B, which is like understanding how to place your bones in a position where stuff starts to connect and work, right? So rather than saying what's failing, it's like this is like what's kind of happening in your body, right? So these bones are meant to fit a certain way. When they don't fit, some functions don't happen. When they do fit, those functions amplify and get better. Can you feel this? Oh yeah, I can feel the difference between this. Or can you feel that? No, I don't really feel it that differently. I'm like, okay, keep that there and do something else on top of that new program that you're running with these bones. Oh, I feel that really differently now. So each person is kind of different, right? But it's just understanding what happens when the structure is there, So you have C, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like now that these bones are fitting in a certain orientation, because that's essentially where people have got to learn how to position their structures to build a chassis, right? You're essentially like a chassis in a car. I make a reference, right? So it's like, it's the main housing part that all the parts insert into for the car to become a car. Before it's a car, it's just a chassis, but when you bolt everything else to it, now it becomes a car, right? When they all start working together, right? Your chassis, which is your body, your structure, allows certain things to organize or orientate in a certain way, right? So that allows a person to start recognizing how they become a little bit more athletic with their body rather than just lifting weights to gain strength. This is a movement and movement regulatory system, right? It's geared towards, hold on, I've just got a pop-up screen here and we'll pop it away, right? It's geared towards longevity and efficiency and power, right? So, I mean, in a nutshell, like those are words of what this is, right? The physical explanation is that like I will start with like the top, my idea of where the top of posture is, and this may or may not be like true in a sense, but like this is the lens that we look at it through CR at the moment, right? Is that we have to, I at least will try and distinguish for people where the top of your posture kind of like arises to, right? And a lot of this is where you have, right? They say
Mm-hmm.
these things are worth 1,000 words, right? You see this in green? That's not mold. That's just a highlight, right? This is the first rib, right? And you guys can go to my website. crgenesis.com, right?
I'll put a link.
And
I'll put a link
yeah,
later
but yeah,
on.
but it's just so that you can I have the whole outlay of the program so you can kind of understand through the wording what is entailed in terms of some of this, just so they can do their own research as well. This is what I call the halo. And I call it a halo because it's basically like top down, right? So as you can see how the structure runs this way, these two ribs sit underneath the clavicular joints and connect into this, and then they have influence on the entire rib cage. So you adjust this as a point of reference. It's a very small part, but like everything changes from any adjustment in the halo system. So the body needs a governing compass. This just brings attention to one point, which seems to be right at the top of the rib cage and all the way down and separates from the head. So this is an area that a lot of people are collapsed in, right? And this is where the attention point comes into, is understanding how to utilize your bone structure with these fit with the hips and how pressure is organized. Do you have any
Yeah.
questions there? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask something about visuals because, like,
Sure.
when from my perspective, like visuals I like very prioritized in the body. So no matter how you are like curved lower, like your body, your eyes more or less wants to stay aligned. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so that's also like I see how it combines with the halo basically, because like halo can be twisted, yes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we'll
There
still
is.
gonna pretend to be straight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are things that I hopefully will hit home in terms of people, because this is a structural thing people can kind of see, right? Without the smoke and mirrors of muscles and fascia. This is just straight to the bones, right? And you're right, just to take a note on what you just said there without streaming too far. So the eye is generally, if something's off and about, right? And the head would normally be in equilibrium like this, will want to be in line with the horizon. So it will adjust the body to keep the head in line with the horizon, right? This is just one instance, right? But I know in my experience of working with people that like there are certain types that have equilibrium held in certain places of the body. And what I mean by equilibrium, guys, is just like there's certain parts of the body that act like the sensors and the compass to holding your body in balance, right? So one's the eyes, right? Then there's like the inner ear and the atlas that may be often cocked around, so I think they're being straight, right? And then there's also like the TMJ, which could be recessed in one over under by one side or too far forward, so it has to kind of shift in this way. And then there's like I've even seen the coccyx and the sacrum being like the other part.
Hmm.
You get like incredibly gifted rally drivers or like motocross like riders, and it's like they steer through their asses, right, in the cars. So their sensory is like vision and peripherally, and then they steer off their asses, right? So that's I don't know if you can pick that. Some of them have just developed senses to being into equilibrium, right? But when we're talking about everything centrally being up here, because most of it's up here, all right? Where the equilibrium is where you're talking about eyes. The halo joins up at the back, underneath and through into T1, which is essentially the base of your cranium, inclusive of the cervical spine. So the angle that the T1 sits is quite critical for the rest of the system, right? Because if that fails, let's say if this is this way and it's like that, you're going to have to really pull the head back to become part of the posture to stop this from falling all the time, right? And this is where I think the one of the bigger differences to many models is that like it's aimed towards intrinsic strength. Now, let's not throw that container around. The intrinsic strength is the inner musculature that holds the body upright. And I'll just call it musculature to keep it simple. Obviously, there's a lot more depth that we can go into, but just for this is like we'll just say that like the integrity of the internals, inclusive of organs, what you don't see on the surface, like you cannot see this stuff in a mirror. It's like what's past everything that you can visually see. It's an invitation to starting to map what's internally in your system, So that's what this is for. That's the invitation. This is how I envisioned people needing to connect to their inner selves without being esoteric, right? but literally feeling, not emotionally, but actually getting the senses of what your inner self, your inner self, inner being, inner model feels like, right? Whatever language you want to use. But we're talking about it in a physicality. So
Would
the
you
the
agree
concept,
is just mastering interoception?
yeah, we could use that exactly. I would agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there's
To
a lot that
simplify
there's a
it.
lot of different arrows that go into that one
Yeah.
pointing system, right? You know, whatever people's like. I mean, a lot of people agree on multiple different ways of language, right? But the difference here is that like that has to be strong enough to hold your chassis and your structure together, so that the orientation of everything internally can work together as a synergist system to balance the spine, rib cage, and the pelvis together, um, and take the load off of this. I call this, like superficial, right? And then you have sub. So superstructure. It's the superficial stuff that's on top of the bones, and then you have the substructure, which is like all the internals that you cannot see with your eyes, right? It's everything
Hmm.
past that. And then there's like an intermedial one that goes in between. So there's like, as far as I can see and I can feel, there's like three layering systems in the body. But it enables your superstructure to take a break from holding yourself upright. So the typical glutes and like erectors and everything on your back line that's supposed to hold you erect by retracting the scapula super hard and lifting your chest up and bringing your head back and straightening your chin and getting like the double or triple chin is like a very superficial way of looking at it, because when that's under constant tone like that, you have no more room for potential that's already been used up as a static postural position. Let's just say, and this is just a number, right? So if you say you use 50% of that energy and range to hold yourself upright, you've only got 50% left to go, right? So it's a matter of being able to build up this inner part so you can yield and become a bit
Hmm.
heavier, a bit more supple, so that when the time goes, everything on the backside is available to be used towards the movement, right? So,
So
I mean, yeah, essentially, I mean, if that's resonating with some people, that's the invitation to what seer is basically like, right? So the first origin point is starting to map your bones, you know? It's like we put them first because they're growing tissue, right? And they can be changed and remodeled over time. They don't happen quickly, right? But you can adjust your structure with the bones even remodeled after years and years. Like, it's like I'd say bare minimum about 7 years for most cases and many things, but they do change. Structure changes, and then it's like there's the slowest growing ones. The next ones will be like connective tissue, and then the red tissue, you know, which is the muscular tissue. So give the slowest growing ones the most importance first, so that they can be ahead because they're the slowest moving ones, right? You know?
So if you can sum it up, like to clarify for some people,
Yeah.
I'll just try to do my way, and you say if I'm correct with what I'm saying.
Sure.
So it's like what you said. If we are not organized from the inside, then the outside, the superficial part of our body, has to catch us, basically, because we don't hold ourselves from the inside. And then making organization around bonds, which are like the the scaffolding of the human body and the slowest growing, slowest changing tissues of our bodies, help
Hmm.
us to basically give the reference point for our nervous system to get that organization from inside. Yeah?
You need a strong enough chassis. You need enough hardware that your body can defaultly hold itself in a position and return to a position where this is constantly available to in an organization, right? It's really part of the regulation process, because your organs are not separate to your spine. They are actually part of the spine. They're not separate. People will look at a spine as a separate thing, right? But you got organs like attached and hanging off of them, it's a window to start seeing, like, if your spine is orientated in a certain way, your organs are not in the positions they need to be, right? So when you're looking at these things where you're trying to fix asymmetries, I might say, right? Fix the asymmetries, well, like, and for reference, like whether someone's got a scoliosis or whether a dropped shoulder or something like this, right? You may be looking at it in a sense of like, oh, this muscle's not firing or this, but it's more so like where is your system of pressure failing you that things are off that's now causing these curvatures to be, if that makes sense, you know?
Hmm.
So again, when you're
What
looking at things in, yeah, Karen.
what conditions have to be met for this process to happen?
The conditions that need to be met is to actually as a very baseline, if we're going right back to the beginning of someone entering this thing, right, is understanding how your rib cage, the shape of it, its current shape or its future state of it works with your hips. All right. That is the very basis of this. Because there is a very low amount of awareness as to how the systems of the body work. And that's not one's fault because it's a very complicated thing to think about, right? But you know, when we've done a bit of the rib cage, if we look at the hips, right? The first time you show someone this, they go wide-eyed and bugged when they start understanding that, at least breaking it down simply, right? That there is two hemispheres of the hips, right? Where you have a left side and a right side. So they're meant to be able to, and this is exaggerating it just for people to see. They're meant to be able to open and close, right? Simultaneously, like sequentially, right? Or either when you're kind of walking, the hips are not meant to be calcified, glued, and stuck as like a bowl. They need movement, right? In some cases, it moves too much. Some cases, it doesn't move at all. In some cases, one side moves too much. In some cases, the other one doesn't at all, right? So, but just keeping it simple for now, the positioning of how the hips are and the shape of how you're able to control this is where a lot of people have no idea what to do. They don't even know that it moves like that or it's meant to. So that's the one of the first lessons to understanding this. These are the features of your body that you are commanding, right? And then also kind of understanding how the ribs and the pelvis are meant to fit in a certain orientation as well. And if you look at it even here, it's like the only thing that really connects this from top to bottom is like the lumbar spine. Yeah, in terms of the bone structure. It's not very big. It's not a very nice thing to be reliant on if everything is out of position, right? But this is where, you know, when you looking at core musculature, I'm just going to keep that simple. We'll just call it, because most people will understand that language, core musculature, right? You'll have a connection between rib cage. I need to hang this up so I can see or get a proper skeleton, right? I'm gonna do my best here, right? So it's like there's this. Actually, you know what? This will be easier on me, right? Forget that. There you go. So it's like the connection between here and here is a network of muscle mass, right? Now, if you're built up and you have the connection there, it's all the time, it's there for you all the time. Your organs are contained and you kind of have a pressure system. But for most people, they don't have this, right? So there's a tone that gets set there. When they're relaxed or when it's off and they're not aware of it, it lets go and it's back onto the backup system of the spine again. Right. So it's getting people to understand how these things are meant to fit. Because there is a utility that gets met when they do fit properly. Right. Is there a question that you want to ask her for a sec?
Yes, yes, yes. I want you to tell something for people that, there are people who are like doing like stretching, doing like core exercises, doing
Sure.
like, all the strength working, and
Yep.
yet they're missing something. So, can you kind of answered to that
Sure.
question with what you
Yep.
said before, but could
Yep.
you like, yeah, answer for it now more having in mind like those people?
Yeah, sure. If there's the I would invite people to the end goal first. identify rather than like going like, oh, these are breaking up and you need to do this. It's for like, well, what are you doing? What is this? What is all of this for? Right? And then you can decide from like, oh, I just want to get a bit bigger, right? I just want to have bigger muscles and look a bit better, or I want better posture, or I want to run better, right? I want to jump higher. I want to sustain a lot better, right? That is that part here is probably the most important part of the equation, right? From here. And then this point here, where are you now? Right? And people like you and myself, it's a lot easier for us to kind of judge where they are right now compared to seeing where they think they are, because
Yeah.
a lot of the times that's what I'm saying, a lot of this time is the judgment's a really important thing to be able to do. This is why you and I have a liability and we have to be very highly skilled and accountable for their well-being, for their health, right? And that's exactly what this is. It's like you're looking, and let's frame that like this is a health industry, you know? I wouldn't consider it fitness. I mean, it can be as a byproduct, but like paramountly, so this is like, I would like to look at it as like, as a health view. And something that's healthy for you is meant to be something that's good. It's not meant to be destructive to you, but it's also a part of that thing where you're like, in order to be healthy, you kind of got to know what you're doing, right? So part of this thing for these guys is to distinguish where you are right now, where you're going, and if you're breaking it all down, why you're breaking it all down, and what is that doing? So it's educating to people, right? Half the time, like the movement you want to be doing is this, right? So you're going to have to like this to understand the dynamics of the movement itself in order to understand how you're going to strengthen through these ranges, because a lot of this time here, this I know where you're getting at. I'll just shortcut this so it doesn't rant on for forever, right? The keynote is if someone let's look at it this way. You may have, let's just give me three types of examples of people that you may want to address in this matter. So you might have, let's say, for example, you might have a client that's like a tennis player or a soccer player, right?
Yeah.
And he's got stuff broken up into certain things, right? And then you might have a martial artist or something, right?
And
You
then
know?
you can have like pole dance yoga girl
Yeah,
that
okay.
had
Right.
like, I don't know, car accident and suddenly nothing doesn't work as it used to.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Let's look at the common thing amongst these things. This is a
Yeah.
good thing because then we can kind of go, how does this serve that type of population that has such a different goal with certain things and different things that they do, right? And so I I have this wheel. It's a very simple wheel for people to understand the dynamics of movement. It's a three-point system. It's like a cycle of movement. So you need stability first. So, the assessment for you and as a practitioner or something like that, and as a practitioner of your own body is to assess and judge whether or not you have stability. You 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 attain that by any means possible first. All right. Once you've checklisted that, right, you move on to creating flexibility. Now, the flexibility, I'm going to put it there because most people understand that, right? It's like, oh, you need some sort of mobility and flexibility this way, right? But this is where, so it's like from stability, you then have an anchor to create some sort of flexibility. You can't be unstable and then try and create flexibility as well, right? Because then you're in chaos.
And yeah, and that's very common thing that people who
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
being flexible are missing
Yes.
stability.
Yeah, they don't
And
even have the stability to begin
yeah,
with, right? You know? Yeah, exactly. Or they find one point of stability and all the flexibility comes off that. So there's only one particular point, right? So we go to the flexibility part once you've assessed that. That flexibility part, because now you're gonna have to imagine I'm drawing a triangle of this cycle here, right? Like I can't one day we'll be able to go, AI, do this, right? But
we're
so
very
you have the
close
flex.
to this point,
Oh,
I
I
think.
know. It's here. It's absolutely here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We just don't
Exactly.
have right tools for the moment, but they are there for sure.
Yeah. In the time being, let's just enjoy these moments. We'll talk about them in the future. Remember when we had to do this
Yeah.
by ourselves? Right. So you get the flexibility. Now, this part of flexibility is essential to be able to create a potential. So it's like napping rubber band. That's the type of flexibility you want. It's a movement potential. Your tissues off of the stability are able to create some sort of energy potential, right? This is where a lot of things enter into this point, right? A lot of different ways. And then to get over here is power. That's the release of this potential. And then it comes back up the triangle, back into stability. That is the cycle that at bare minimum, for the health of your system, for the longevity and your success in your athleticism, needs to meet. All right, that's really summed up. It's quite simple. It's looking forward to you. It's quite straightforward to follow. I
Like,
kind of get right. So a lot of the times people may find the stability, find the stretch, and then no power delivery, and just go back to this and this, this and this, this and this, and eventually the ratio doesn't match, and the body starts adapting to just this stimuli without coming back through a whole cycle of this, you know? And then there's like basically just going straight from like stability to power. They're going around the opposite direction here. They don't actually create any potential. It's just contract, 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 contract. Do you know what I mean? And I'm talking globally in the body. I mean, let's say, for example, if you're like in a leg extension machine, the rest of the body doesn't have to do anything. You're just going a stretch reflex off of the quad and maybe the hamstring if you're kind of skilled with it. But that short-term thing is where you're only creating it in two joint structures of the body, right? Practically, right? You're not incorporating the rest of the system with like the hip and the rib cage really as part of a pressure system there. It has its time and place if your body already knows what it's utilizing it for, which is going back to your same question about people like segmenting things, but you have to connect this thing first, and the body has to understand that cycle before you can start isolatingly bringing in things to fill in gaps. Because I actually, and this is for the bros that are coming on board, I have no qualms with like you guys using machines, given that the nervous system and the body understands what its purpose is for. You have the North Star that you've connected your ribcage and your pelvis together, because those things are quite useful. Because people designing those machines, no, they weren't stupid, right? It's just you get people having no ideas how to connect to their body using them. You know, they don't know how to position slightly into this thing where they can get like a knee and an ankle extension while having the head turned in a certain way and being able to create pressure that you get a stimuli close to the sport that you're doing, right?
yeah, maybe we can go back now to the pressure system, because like you mentioned it, but can you explain it again, like to 5 years
Sure.
old?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what's about the
Okay. So
pressure system in the body?
yeah, sure. Okay. Like, let's
You're
put all the
excited.
children. Come around, come around. Exactly. I mean, yeah, do your best. I mean, because I got a lot to say. So, you're going to have to like round it up. Spaz, back to the center again. Let's bring it around this way. All right. Because I'll talk for hours.
Yeah. So we'll, yeah,
Yeah.
like, don't worry. I have to finish by 11, so by an hour for my time. So
Okay. I
we'll do
mean,
our best. Okay, so pressure system.
let's look at in terms of mechanics of the body, right? The most essential survival system is breathing. Yeah. And go out food or whatever else, but let's just say breathing, like for the average person, like by 5 minutes, they're pretty much brain dead, right? You know,
Hmm.
that's being generous, right? So your breathing is like the primary mechanism. Now, if we reduce ourselves to not being human, now you're basically just a pump, yeah? Because you need, like you've had a bicycle pump before, right? Everyone else might, hopefully has had a lifestyle where they've had to pump their own bicycle tire, right? So if we just look at it as that, like we're actually a pump and everything in our body is primarily a pump. You look at the lymphatic system, your breathing system, your blood and everything else, everything is a pump, right? So we need to pump in order to survive, right? So
We need to
pressure,
pump. That's a nice
yeah,
sentence. We need to
it is,
pump.
right? Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. It's like, yeah, Arnold would be proud. It's a pump, right? It goes to the
yeah.
gym, goes to the pump, right? That's probably how most of us guys ended up here anyways. We've seen that movie, right? With Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's be truthful, right? You know?
Yeah,
But
he really made a lifestyle out of it. Like,
oh, absolutely,
yeah,
right? It did,
yeah.
right? Oh, yeah. So anyways, like in a pump, you need a diaphragm and you need a contained cylinder to contain the pressure so that it can go wherever the air needs to go in pressure. We're not indifferent to this, right? We have a few diaphragms in the body. I will keep the tism dial really low today, right? But a few diaphragms, and we need a containment system, right? So essentially, that's what the pressure system is at the entry level, all right? Your your organs don't pump themselves, besides the heart, right? It's like the rest of it doesn't. It needs movement and it needs like actual pressure on the organs in order for them to have some sort of flow, right? Some suppleness that kind of happens here. Otherwise, they just go and they get stuck and visceral fat runs around them. And then you know that's a whole rabbit hole on its own, right? You cannot create pressure on these organs when they're not contained in the cylinder that we're talking about. You know, you look at a bicycle pump, and if you went to pump it down this way and it bellowed out this way, the same time you're going to lose pressure, right? You're not going to get the pressure into the bicycle tire, right? Now, this is I'll go through the utility of the pressure system after we've kind of like distinguished what it is, right? So again, if you look at the top of the hips, I believe its design is there for this specific purpose. I mean, otherwise it could be a whole other different shape, right? It's kind of rounded. It's very comfortable. It doesn't hurt when it enters your system. You know what I mean? It's actually quite inviting to end up in there. Like I'm resting my liver on that bone. It's now interfering, not on my ribs, it's interfering in my liver. So I'm actually like, this is now pressed up against my diaphragm on this side of my body. So again, we're talking about two hemispheres here. If you look through this line of my linea alba, if I take a breath in, my diaphragm is meant to sink, right? It's meant to drop. There's not much room here anymore. So I get this side stretching as this one stays in its place. So you get one side diaphragm starting to stretch. Now this part is enabling it to move with my spine off the center. So what's holding me up here is not the structure of the spine and the two shoulders stacked over the hips. The entire visceral system internally is what's holding me upright and giving me the suppleness and buoyancy, right? And I'm standing here, like you can hear my voice, there's no labor in this. I'm actually talking to you while my diaphragm's doing its thing, right? That is the system that needs to be built up, but it has to be paired with a structural alignment. I might say a chassis alignment that allows these organs to behave this way, right? That you have the pressure underneath. And this is what I call buoyancy, right? You know, at some point, this is where I go to the utility. So hopefully you guys kind of got the concept of how the spine needs to move across and no longer being the main bearing of weight anymore. Your system and the rest of your joints coordinate with the pressure that gets put through the floor and reaches the halo as a compass from here. That's the first point. This is just the first lens of the system. It develops further, obviously.
I would just say something like for
Yep.
to mention like working with those pressure things. Like it's like totally different than just I don't know stretching muscles or like strengthening muscles. It has to happen like from different level for nervous system for body to let go. Like like for example like because you mentioned diaphragms,
Yeah.
could you explain a little bit further diaphragms, because like diaphragm
Sure.
can be confused like just for a muscle for most of the people. I know you mean like
Yeah.
more like body cavities than that, but
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we can bring reference to it, right? So people can kind of conceptualize what's going on here. In I think most can comprehend that there's at least two, right? The one most commonly used here, and this is for like this the entry level one, is the one that lives in here, right? The one that sits in the rib cage, mainly responsible for breathing mechanisms. So people will think there's more than one function to any of this stuff internally, right? Well, one's for automated survival, the other one's actually for like movement and mechanisms, right? So every organ that you can imagine internally has more than one function, right? So just I want people to think about that, right? Because there is more than one function. Your diaphragm's not just meant to breathe in and out to create pressure differential so that your lungs can open and close, right? It's also like a system that allows for stability and balance and for power because your diaphragm should be strong enough to like hold your rib structure in a certain shape and a certain tensegrity, right? without needing to constantly always rely on air pressure to hold it upright. Because then otherwise you're just like you're like a half-filled balloon. You squeeze it, right? But when you get tired, it deflates and then it's got no tension whatsoever, right? Until you're kind of sitting on it. And that's part of the problem is that structurally when you don't have the hardware, when you're not strong enough internally, these things are the things that collapse, right? So that's like the part of when we're looking at what the diaphragms are, they need to be conditioned in a way that is conducive to having an elastic property, almost like really rubbery, like they themselves can potentiate. You know, that the diaphragms themselves, if we're isolating them, because you're talking about the diaphragms, right? They themselves need to be able to do that cycle themselves to stabilize the body, potentialize it, and then release power from the diaphragms alone, right? But this is where the system like this gives it the segue to it because they are now becoming the compassing thing that actually helps stabilize the body when the spine is no longer the thing that now axially stabilizes it. That makes sense? And
Yeah,
for
it
the main
does.
viewer, like if you're in the center all the time, sagittal this way, where like axial load is there, and you're having to like try and decompress this way, the spine is one of the primary things that like acts as the main strut and stabilizer, right? You know, you come off board here, it's like, and if you can see this, this is the other part that the system allows people to see is understanding how external geometry works. If my and this is so it's like you're looking at center of mass and a plumb line. This foot, I wish I had a wider camera, now comes up this hip. This goes through and into this shoulder. My head's off center, my hip's off center. So my line through this is through here. And my spine's off the center. So it's not relying on my spine as an axial loader. There's no axial loading through the system. It's actually in the diaphragms. Now, the second one while I'm here is this guy here, right? And I don't know if this is referenced by anybody else. I just make it more simple to understand. I call the pelvic floor diaphragm, right? Because then people get the reference that this is a diaphragm and this is a diaphragm and they're meant to work together. It's not a diaphragm and a pelvic floor where people don't understand that they're meant to work in synergy together, right? And as we mentioned earlier, the hips are meant to be able to move like this. It affects the shape and the tension of the diaphragm underneath here. So this is like right underneath your asshole and everything in your freaking organs this way. So as that moves wider, you get to stretch. You get stability via taut tension rather than contraction in it. Because if you're walking around with like your pelvic floor puckered up the whole time around, I mean, you're constantly on tension. You never yield. You will never create the right proper ground force tension. You will never get into the organs up here and connect these two. So there's a point where like you understand and the body creates safety to understand how to organize these bones that they can yield into each other. And that alone is part of the stretch mechanism that I was talking about. You have the stability, the stretch is from here, and then all you got to worry about is like what direction is going to organize all of this for it to go in a specific direction or create like a utility, you know?
Yeah, like maybe now it's the good moment like to use word grounding because like I believe it's like
Yeah,
very overused word, but
sure.
what I understand by pressure system, for example, what you showed with
Yeah,
that shift to the side, the
sure.
pressure should be able to like push to the ground. And that's what I understand by grounding. If you are able to yield to our body with the right pressure disturbance, we are
Hmm.
grounded. And
Yep.
if we are not able to do it, then we are like, oh, like basically we hold that like tensions with different parts of our body, and our
Hmm.
body doesn't cooperate as a system. So we're not grounded. We're like cut off tree, like easy to be pushed off and like fell. So
Yeah.
so like by my words, if I'm about to sum it up, like pressure system with
Hmm.
diaphragms cooperating helps
Hmm.
our body to have very healthy relationship with the ground basically, and always be able to to move that pressure, move that force to the ground, and move the force from the ground to our body to disturbance the force. And this is like the first thing required for as you said, like the freedom of movement, the elasticity, because the pressure gives safety for anything else to be fired. if there's no pressure, the secondary and etc. systems has to secure us to don't destroy ourselves, basically.
Yeah, it's a good summary, but to add a bit of MSG or salt on top of that, right?
Go.
It's yeah. Um that's the keynote to athleticism, is like understanding. It's very easy to get caught up in, let's say, strength and conditioning and fitness about, like where the boundaries of where the body is. It's usually like between a head, feet, and that's pretty much it. We have to take into account the physics. Let's call it the physics, like it's gravitational force, right? And that is luckily enough for us is quite consistent, right? The force that's there, it's like it's consistently in the room. It doesn't really fluctuate in any measurable amount, right? So where the inconsistency, we have to calibrate ourselves to that equation, right? And this is where buoyancy comes in, right? Because a lot of the times, like when you need to perform something athletic where movement is involved, and let's just frame what movement is, right? It's like you taking the entire mass of your body committed to directions and having to accelerate it and then accelerating something again while everything is accelerating, then decelerating to stop everything in its place where everything stops, right? That's in a nutshell, right? It's like you're not going to get that in a deadlift or a bench press. I'm just giving people the differential, right? You're moving a weight, but like in the other one, you're moving your entirety and like having to deal with forces, right? Because you're now having to meet the ground, right? So
Explosion management.
the buoyancy is being able to kind of go, the utility of what I have to do here, if I'm going to slam dunk or if I'm going to jump over this wall and parkour and then land, is the ability and the conditioning, right? And the preparation that I can borrow, store, or kinetically charge my body to use the force of gravity to complete the task and then survive it in a loop, right? So that's part of the loop. It's like, I can't jump standing still to do a slam dunk, right? But if I run up and then plant my foot, have a sequence that comes up, I can borrow that force in my tissues to then reach the height and then come back and land. So athleticism to me is being able to produce more force through your body through gravity than you could in your own tissues, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And that buoyancy needs to be there with the pressure systems. And if it's not, you can train your muscles to overload to get to there, but that will be short-lived. You know what I mean?
yeah. Like let's go back. Like for some people, like to have other reference. Like what was missing in the like movement and that. Okay, I'll cut off that one. Uh, which which ideas did you originally believed into and you had to abandon them, like on the process of making where you are right now?
Ooh, I like this question. I like this because I've had to abandon a lot of things, man. My life is about abandonment. Leaving things aside, It's look, I mean, if you wanna I have had to leave things behind and reintroduce them to retest and then take so, there was as in like what the stuff I've had to do and like other models of things. Um yeah, I've power like as in like my movement history or just my my
You,
my thought
you
processes.
you can go general, like you can go in movement and in like thought system, like what's coming to you that was like really important and hard to abandon? What you were attached like really hard
I think the
to?
biggest part was I think when I formed an identity around some of the things that I did when I was younger, like some of the movement things. It's like, you get into movement and you build up a capacity and you have confidence in it with your skill set, right? And then an injury happens that forces you right off a thing. Like you cannot even do anything with it. Like my history too, like I've fractured my back, I've bulged disc, not even bulged, like herniated, and I've torn stuff out of things. I've had one hand surgery. Oh, you can really see that in the camera here, right? Where that's been
It's quite
reconstructed.
big.
Yeah. But those are all lessons, right? But, I found like, at least for myself, to getting over that was like the identity that was me. And I was like, okay, look, I have to reform. Some of these things as well was when, um, the mindset is kind of going, well, what do I want of myself? What do I want this vehicle to do? How do I want it to serve me? Because if I'm saying I want it to be that way and I'm behaving a different way, then that's ultimately not going to work out very well. It's not a very good pair, right? So along the way of these things, I started looking at things objectively. At least when I figured out, I'm like, okay, I have to stop looking at this in so many lenses that I've been through and use them as a map to understanding how certain things do work. But I have to really start looking at it as like, what am I actually looking at here? And you start looking at anatomy charts and stuff like that or whatever to start understanding these things. And honestly, like looking at them, you're guessing half the time. That was what I was happening to me. I'm like, okay, well, I'm looking at a body chart and I'm like, maybe it's this line, or maybe it's that, or maybe it's this or whatever. And I realized I'm like, this goes out the window as soon as you take a step. And then it occurred to me, I'm like, I'm looking at this in the light of a cadaver. We're not cadavers, we're living and breathing. And the second that we move, everything changes. Like that whole thing pretty much just disappears. So I was trying to understand movement through a corpse's lens, right? And I'm like, all right, okay. I'm gonna have to really start testing shit out. I'm gonna have to friggin' start fucking around finding out through myself because no wonder I'm getting nowhere because I'm trying to use this thing in a stationary lens, right? And then, so that was a lot of the things I had to abandon. When I started seeing things in those lenses, I started looking at things more simply. I'm like, well, where are the bones fitting? If I spent so many years looking at muscle, doing the stuff that I was doing, being a power lifter and being a ring gymnast and a calisthenics athlete and then, being a body worker, I spent many years over a table, like working on people's like soft tissue while they were lying there like a corpse, trying to get them to regulate themselves so that their heart rate dropped to almost being like a corpse. Slow down your breathing, minimal. Last 10% of the breathing. I'm like, oh, do you feel better now? Yeah, now that you stop pressing against my damn freaking thigh, sure, right? Like now go for a walk. I'm like, and you see him and like, oh, I feel so much better. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm not pressing on you, right? You know? So
Yeah, like if something hurts you, like bring a hammer and hit him, like it will hurt less.
yeah, exactly. Anything feels better than that. So these were the things that I invested a lot of time and energy in, right? Mainly because I was trying to get a result, but at the time when I started looking at things in realism, I'm like, this is not getting very far. And it occurred to me, right? Because you're talking about how I came into like what I had to abandon with these things, right? Was that, at this point, it's like people are coming in, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, right? You've experienced this where people have come in, and in a 1 hour session, you get someone to move so starkly different, the night and day between the beginning of the session and the end. And you and I both know in 1 hour, no musculature changed. They didn't get any stronger by developing. It's not like they went in a time warp and like, oh, let's spend 10 years eating and training, and then in 1 hour you're actually like getting better. I'm like, it's a software thing, right?
It is.
And that at the first, you think it's such a simple concept to think, but when you're in the pit trying to figure it out, when you realize that, you're like, fuck, how did I not see that before? Right? This is a software problem. And then you go, wait a minute, let me go the other spectrum. Let me try and upgrade the software when I think the hardware is not there. They're computing the software up here, but they don't have enough hardware in the body to compute this thing. The more we try and put this through here, the more tense they're getting and the worse their conditioning is getting, even though they're getting in the geometry that they need to. Now they can't move. Now that you're in that position, they can't move. I'm like, because now they're totally growth stabilized, and their sympathetic system's through the fucking roof, right? So I'm like, this is a good reference for them, but this shouldn't be done like till the cows come home because now they don't know how to move. All they know how to do is just growth stabilize and grip, right? So I kind of had to start looking at the spectrum of going and being able to have the lens to going, who needs what, right? And most of the instances where you're like, oh, this person's got enough hardware and structure, let's start positioning them and learning how to like engage into their structure and then start putting that into movement. The ones that didn't, I'm like, here, just get in the pressure system and just do some bicep curls and just do like some pressure system bodybuilding so you can start to develop the chassis so that we can move you. but
Mm-hmm.
it allowed that framework. That's what I'm saying. It has to be contained. That's like you have to be able to judge to going, this is where you're at. Remember, we were talking about that earlier in terms of the three people we were talking about,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
This is the point where you're going, I know you want to do this and you're trying to do all this sort of stuff, but you don't even have this shit right here. You don't have the stability. You don't have the hardware to be wanting to do that right now. You've got to stay here and you've got to build up functionally like your precious system. That has to be strong as shit before you want to go and do that. And trust me, once you've got that set, you don't even have to look back. This is now part of your automated unconscious intelligence that your body's going to form because this is where it finds safety. You know, you've regulated your nervous system to making this thing the thing that it's your default positioning to go into under a cower response rather than just and nothing. It's like you're off to the side. You can condition that, right? You will always you will always fall to your preparation and conditioning. When the shit gets hard, it's like what you've prepared for in conditioning, you'll fall to that. If it's good, you'll survive. If it's not, you'll break. You know what I mean? So it's important and imperative that people understand that they can access this stuff because these are features. They're not bugs, they're absolute features. Like to be able to start to understand you're in a map, you're gonna last a long time because, again, it's in my perspective and it's like I have a whole lifetime to test this out and I intend on it, right? Is that like your system internally is super sensitive. That's how I feel, right? It's like, when like I'll do the PG version, right? It's like if you have a graze or a cut and you touch it, you know you're touching it. That air could blow on it, and you know that something's going over it. The internals are they're that sensitive if you have the attention to them, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they're all sensors. And if your spine is in a certain orientation position and it recognizes that constantly, I don't think we age that quickly. I think that's like, it's like as replication happens, it's like, oh, this hasn't sunk a millimeter in the last 5 years. I don't, and so we're continually doesn't lose the growth hormones, it doesn't lose and this is like I'm saying, I have no scientific evidence of this right now, but I have a whole lifetime to test this out, CR is like what, 2 years old, you know? Like I'm about to off this program, I'm about to start writing some more in-depth modules with this thing. Like in 5 years' time, it'll make more sense to kind of going, oh, I see what he did to that initial part to now develop all of these things as layers for people to understand how to walk through. This is just a map again, right? But if your spine stays at length to where it's meant to be, sort of thing, I don't think a lot of things like start to degenerate very quickly or very resilient, you know? Yeah.
Yes. If like, but what I'm thinking is like one of the most important factors and hard on the beginning, it's like honesty. Because like the more we're getting aware of what's getting inside, so that's how we are sharpening our senses. We have to be
Yes.
honest. Because we are finding out
Hmm.
what we were not caring for years. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's I believe it was hard for me. And I see it's also
Yes.
like hard for people. Because like
It,
awareness it's important, but it hurts as well, like when you're getting into that on the beginning.
yes. Awareness is one of the most scarce resources that we have, right? And we've talked about this off
Yeah,
screen and
we
like
did.
that,
Yeah.
how that is one of those things. It's attention and awareness is very, very scarce, right? And I might add that like attention is like one of the primary mechanisms for any transformation to happen, right? Because it's the vessel for communication. You need attention for ideas to pass. And that's not just between, let's say, you and me. That's like to myself. I need to be able to communicate to myself to kind of going, do I have an attention map between myself, right? Do I have the attention to kind of going like, do I even know where my liver positioning is? And half the people don't, they'll go on the other side. I'm like, it's actually this way, So it's like the attention to what they're doing. Because, you need to gauge, like right now we're on the opposite side of the world, right?
Yeah.
So the distance is not that bad, but we have each other's attention that I can pass an idea to you and you can pass it to me. And that's basically the vessel for communication, right? If if my body has a sense, which is here I need the attention, right? The distance is like now to my psyche, but if my psyche is well, the fuck wherever it is, like in my freaking finances or in my girlfriend's freaking never mind, right? In my freaking whatever, right? Whether I've left the stove on at home or not, there's no way that that connection is going to be meeting, right?
Yeah,
And
like
then
lately,
that
yeah,
honesty comes afterwards, right? Exactly. You know?
lately I heard like about some experiment, and I want to mention it because I think it's a good one for this point. Like they pick a flower and they made like padded floor for that flower, and this flower when it fall, like it
Yep.
close itself. So they wanted to test if flowers learn. So if it fell on like hard ground, it closed. So then they made that padding and were checking if it's gonna change its behavior. And it did. When it realized it's like on soft floor, it stopped closing its flower. And
Mm.
it took it only 3 attempts.
Yeah, wow. So I had some
Three
cellular
attempts.
memory.
Yeah.
Mm.
So my message, my message with that is like what you said, like where is your awareness? If you're like busy with like with your girlfriend, like your work, whatever,
Mm.
like you're not letting this like different kind of intelligence do the work, because that
Mm-hmm.
nervous system intelligence, that sensory intelligence, it's not
Mm-hmm.
like prefrontal cortex intelligence, not the one we are
Conditioned
so
to
conditions to
using as
think
a
about.
compass,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That
Yeah.
healing and that like internal body mapping and everything, it
Mm-hmm.
happens like from different level,
Uh-huh.
and that's so,
Exactly, right?
and
Yeah.
that's something like I think like it's really important to like remember, and that's very hard in our world today because we're so used to that prefrontal thinking, yeah, analytical thinking,
Yeah,
and
that
it.
it's almost shameful if you don't, right?
Mhm.
For many people, right?
Yeah.
And I don't I don't see I don't have a lot of faith in I wouldn't say a lot of faith. Let me rephrase that. It's very difficult in this modern constructed world society for people to reach these depths of themselves. Just mainly because like the stimuli for it, everything goes against the stimuli for it. You have to actively pursue this yourself with like an intense intent, right? You have to be tenacious to wanting to really have like the curiosity, like to keep diving into yourself daily, right? It's like just one of those crazy things where like it seems like I mean, like I think, I've said to you off screen before and where it's like you may have so many bones in your body, right? I will just say that there's under like 300, right? You know, but it's like for one day you might just touch one bone and like familiarize yourself with it, right? And then the next one and the next one. By a year, you've already gone around the whole system more than once, right? It's not that long when you start thinking about how to map yourself, right? So in the terms of, let's say, the average person, let's just say, we're around for 70 years. There's less than 1 year. You've got spent 1 year investing that time in yourself just for inquisition and inquiry into yourself, right? But, to that degree, it's like, it's not difficult, but it's like, can we stay attentive to that part, to understanding how we map ourselves, right? Yeah.
And that's the skill we needed to have to survive before.
Exactly, right? It's a skill we need to survive and thrive as we survive because these days, man, like there are many ways of hacking survival. It's just a matter of whether your quality of life, it's like, and this is where it comes back to going, remember the end goal we were talking about
Yeah.
in the segmentation? It's like this matters. The North Star of what you want to do really matters because that is your compass to what all this is meant to be for, right? Yeah, I mean, my history is like, all right, uh, it was like this, you know. I lived my life like I was gonna die before 40, and my body did that. It was nearly broken before 40, right? It was shattered by like 35, absolutely shattered. I was nearly in a wheelchair, right? I was already looking at it that way. Like just to disclose, like to where CR kind of originated from, right, was from my own freaking destruction of my body at the time, right? Like I had to sleep on the floor because I couldn't roll out of bed, not because I was Asian, right? Because I couldn't actually roll out of bed in the morning. I had to crawl to the bathroom. I had to pee on my knees, right? It was to that point, like it was just it was pretty dire. So, it was like one of those things where, I understood the depression that came with not having a body that functioned and constantly being in pain. And, the whole cycle of destruction of my inner system because of the painkillers and the stuff that I was like having, the anti-inflammatory that I was taking. So I had a long loop to come back from. The thing that changed for me was I realized I was like the stuff, my mental model of what I was doing here wasn't congruent with what I was saying here, that I wanted a long lasting life because I was broken by that time. So I'm like, clearly something's not right here. And then I had to reframe this. And that's kind of where it came about when I started to understand, started to go through the check system, started to go like looking through biomechanics systems, FP, a couple of other different ones that kind of come about. So I did Ito Portal method. I did a bunch of different things all over the place because I was curious. I wanted to see what worked. And it hit me that was like, you know what? It's like they're all praxis. They're all tools, and every single one of these things will serve you until they don't. Because they will be incremental. Things will help you a long way, but they will work until they don't. And
They
all of
don't
them
go
have
deep
that.
enough.
Exactly. And similarly, like, I mean, even this thing is an iterating system. I'm constantly looking at the horizon for that longevity, but at the same time, I'm a bit of a kook. Like to just be at survival level is not enough for me. I want people to thrive. I want myself to thrive, right? So I want to be capable. I want to be able to play with my body. I want to be able to have fun with it. I love training, like my system, and I don't know any whether this is relevant or not, but I use it as a reference point. I have an ectomorphic bone structure, which is nice and skinny, right? Like a little gecko, but I have a mesomorphic, like muscular frame. So I kind of have like, I like to live in my tissues. I like to feel shit, right? And that gives me wealth from myself. I feel friggin' like, as far as I'm concerned, right? If my body was a wealth system, I'm 10 times richer than Elon Musk. That's how I feel, right? That's how I
For
feel.
sure, like for sure,
Yeah.
like it's like no doubt, no.
Yeah. Right.
That's oh
You know,
no. I was
yeah.
about
So
to ask, yeah,
yeah,
like
carry on.
but what you're saying is basically pain is the best teacher. Pain is the best teacher.
It absolutely is. And I think especially for men, because men are hard-headed. We're really, really hard-headed. Like we'll carry on, we'll strap up everything, take everything, and just continue to do the same shit, right? And what worked for you beforehand, for the first year. But we'll continue on it because we just formed to that one opinion, like, oh, it worked for me. It did so much for the beginning, right? Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Like I was having a question that we partly asked, like if the body is constantly adapting to the environment, what kind of body grows in like modern environment? And how we could change that environment a little bit to make it a little bit more towards striving.
That's actually a really good question, right? Because it's like the my brain's on two sides of this at the moment, right? Whether I answer
Mhm.
as an individual or whether it's a collective. Which one would you prefer?
Start as an individual. Start like from your perspective.
Sure. I think that's probably the best part because I think as a collective, everyone has to do their part as an individual that becomes some sort of like an awareness, right?
Yeah.
It always starts that way. You get a small bunch that start doing something different and people realize, right? So again, back to attention and education, right? So it's like if someone is now aware that something within their current, let's say, surrounds, right? Their control of their environment, the it's like I'll just use examples of my clients, right? Because these are some people that have made changes to their environments that have helped them with things, right? They start to understand first that like and it sounds so simple, but like, and I'm sure you've dealt with this and you've probably coached this as well yourself, where you, the stuff you see here, you know,
Mm-hmm.
this is just stimulus, right? It's stimulus for and preparation for life, right? You know, it's like it's not just go in and smash yourself for 45 minutes, eat and sleep and repeat, right? Where you forget about that and it's totally dissociated from what you do in the gym. Right. So this is where these systems that you're preparing prepare you for your life and should leave with you the second you leave the weight room, right? So it's like just being, let's say example, going back to the Halo system, right? It's like being aware and having the awareness to one new thing that in a way, I want to carefully put this way. The pay attention to one thing to begin with until you have the bandwidth to pay attention to many, right? So within your current environment, the adjustment that you might have to make to the environment is within yourself rather than changing anything else around you, right? So that's always the first takeaway. I'm just trying to back this up because I'm trying to answer this how I would coach someone, right? Is making sure that you're understanding of what your halo is doing and being aware of whether you're in that system or not. It's not a highly taxing thing, and that's the main thing. You're not walking around holding your glutes on or thoracically extending or like pulling your scapulas back all the time. It's just a mild awareness this thing all the time, and it burns no energy trying to do it really. It's just an awareness thing. That would be an internal awareness to yourself, right? The other thing that I've had a lot of my clients sort of do as well is like understanding that like some of them have brought dumbbells to work.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
really?
They
Yeah.
brought them to work. Like some people are there, and I'm like, not even big, heavy ones, just like 2 or 3 kilogram ones. And like whenever
And
they
they just
pass, like,
like,
yeah, exactly, right. And they just accumulate over the time. And they find they're going, if I do a couple of these reps here, I'm pretty good for half an hour to remembering this thing. If I just do one set of three, you know what I mean? And then they'll kind of go. So it's like this constant reframing and recycling of the pattern that allows them to reform and find a new default. Because again, it's like these reminders, these habitual things, and the discipline is kind of important because you're trying to enforce something that's good, and the nervous system recognizes it's good, right? So that comes back to you to creating something within some sort of let's put it this way, like some recalibration and readjusting of the defaults within the chaos of what you're having to deal with. And I think through that you start to realize the stressors that you're having to deal with. You know, you could be in a stressful like environment at work, and then whether it's physical or even mental, right? But you just carry on like it's just because you've become jaded and resistant to it. But when you start understanding like, oh, this is actually like I can regulate a lot better. I understand. You know, I'm more observing of what's happening here, and I'm understanding more about like why I have these pains here because when I don't, it's there. When I do this, it's not. So people can build this inner confidence of understanding why certain things have come about rather than not really knowing. That's the first part. Like, you know, it's like to knowing yourself. I know it sounds cliche, but to know yourself is like is within that framework, right? You know, so I would answer it to you that way, but that's where these systems come into people, right? It can't be overloaded where it's like they're having to deal with the stress within this current stressful environment and not have something that requires more than to overload that, you know?
yeah, like you said before, like we have 300 bones, and if we for one day put attention
Mhm.
to one bone, then we will
Yeah.
build that awareness like through year. And I believe there's also something about making it as a ritual. So,
Yeah.
for example, you spoke about that client who brings like dumbbells to work,
Sure.
and even if he does only like 3 sets of 3 reps, but he does
Yeah.
it every day, it's gonna it's gonna get like enhanced. With each rep, it's gonna be
Yep.
getting strongly rooted to the nervous system, and it will be that uh, reference point that this person can go in the stressful situation.
Hmm.
So I believe what you're saying is like keep it simple, because like it's just the first steps to to learn discipline and
Yeah.
to bring back awareness.
Yeah,
And
that's it. These are all just vessels to it. They all tie together, right?
yeah,
You'll often find that these things, and I know you know it. I know that a lot of is that these things have carryover to other parts of your life. You know,
yeah,
they do. Once you figure this one thing out, it's like it spreads far and deep into other things. It's directly applicable because you learn. It's like you said, it's like the practice. What was the word that you used for it? Like I call it discipline. It's like you were
ritual,
talking about ritual, right?
ritual.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's ritualistic, right? It's like it then just becomes it. You understand the lesson behind it, and you can apply it. You learn to feel things rather than think. You know, it's like for
yeah.
once, some people can get out of their head, and they're not in this limbic, in this freaking like frontal lobe, right? You know, they're not in this lobe.
And then if you feel more, think less, you can have more freedom because you don't have to
Yeah,
control everything.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And like what is also important, I believe it's easy to get lost if we don't have like that external frame of reference.
Hmm.
It's it's hard, it's especially right now hard to start just trusting in that feeling. So that's where complete regenesis comes, for example. I
Yeah.
believe it's like a great point of reference. Like you don't have to understand it. You just can start like from daily simple practices, and
Hmm.
slowly you will first understand it with feeling, and then the analytical language will come. It's not a problem, but it's gonna be
Yeah.
like enrooted in you. So that's like real change, like real healing, like real thriving. It doesn't
Hmm.
come like from learning to control more and more and more and more and more. It grows like from the inside. So
Hmm.
so that's how I understand it, at least. Like it's like
Yeah.
from that emotional side as well.
It
Like
can be more.
yeah, yeah. And like emotional security, like internal security. Don't know. Like I'm just looking for some right word. Don't want to.
Security and safety is a very big thing because most people don't trust their bodies, you know.
Yeah,
They really don't, and you only got to look so far let's just frame like a gym environment. Half the people are taped up, with like some sort of knee braces or an elbow brace, or "Oh, I've had to like adapt this exercise to doing this because I don't trust my shoulder or my knee doing it this way."
yeah,
So the language, they'll say a lot of different things, but really all it says is I don't trust myself. I don't trust my body. And the underlying language of that is if you don't trust it, it's like 5 more years, 10 more years down the line, unless this is something that you do something about now, because either the signals, it's like you're going to trust it even less because now you're moving around the problem. You're not fixing
mm,
why that's not there. So
I
that safety, essentially that's what it was. I mean, I always this is when you're talking about certain things, I always and I have a tenacious curiosity to see what our potential can be, you know. And that's kind of my hill to die on. But in a non-destructive way this way, right? Is now to kind
yeah.
of go, how much, right? So part of that potential is starting to is you can't reach that unless you start to understand and look down that line, where you have to create the safety in the body that allows you to express things that haven't been expressed before, right?
Is
It
that
takes
your
time.
drive? Is that your drive? This curiosity? Would you call it like
Oh,
one of your main
yeah,
drives?
absolutely. Absolutely. Like, it's where I get these like I have them God forbid somebody get in my head. My brother in Christ, do not get in my head because I don't know, he'd come out like crying in the room, the corner of the room if he ever got in my head. Right. But it's like just the imagery, I'm like, oh yeah, I wonder what it would take for me to be able to jump like 60 inches off the floor. That's the shit that goes through my head. And I think to myself, I'm like, it's not impossible until I prove it impossible for myself. Right. But if I find the mechanism, like, all right, maybe I just don't have the leverage to do it because of my height. But I'm like, that guy I could get to do 60 inches for sure without breaking anything. And in fact, it would be beneficial for him. That's how my mind works, right? I'm
I
thinking like, yeah, why can't I
yeah,
backflip at 90 years old? Right. And I'm like, if I prepare now, there's no reason why I couldn't, right? As a daily thing, that could be my ritual. Every morning I wake up and do 10 backflips. Sweet. And carry on my day, right? You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And then
but
it just
you
boils
know,
down to what I want, right? It's like currently people I've been asked like, go do a triathlon with me. And I'm like, I can't think of anything worse. But then maybe when I'm like 70 and someone asks me, I'm like, yeah, sure, that's what I want now, right? And I'm capable, right? So, you know.
but you know, all those like random thoughts that you have in your head, it's like setting goal. If you set the goal to make backflip when you're 90 years old, when,
Yeah.
where, then you just have to figure out how. But the goal is set.
The imagery for me is going is like, what does that feel like in my body to do that? I will sometimes like look at I mean, because there are plenty of examples of phenoms, human phenoms like that shouldn't exist that are around that you can see and take in examples. And part of what CR allows people to do when they start feeling things themselves, their lens of vision starts to be able to see shit that they couldn't see before. And it makes it very clear. I'm like, oh, I can now see this on other people. I can see what I'm looking at because I felt this. What I'm dealing with now becomes so it's like it's a way of projection, right? Wherever you are, you can start seeing in the world. And that's a whole other topic, right? But it's a similar sort of thing. But
But
I'm
that's
like
good.
looking, yeah, right?
That's really good. I had that question, like, and what organized movement first? And you partly start us answering to that already. So if you wanna keep on doing that, please
Yeah.
do. What
I mean, let's say,
organized
for example,
movement
I'll
first?
look at a certain person. I'm going, holy crap! Look at that guy's like spinal erectors and his spine, right? And I'll sit there and I'll go, what do I feel like to have something like that? I'm like, oh man, that is like insurance. That I would not worry about my spine doing anything like that if that's what I had, right? But you get a sense of the feel of what that's like. I'm like, all right, well, I gotta get that, right? In order for me, I'm like, how long would I last if I had that? Man, if I could maintain that, I would last like ages. I wouldn't, my spine would never compress. I'm like, all right, so I'm like, I want lumbar erectors and all the way up the spine like Yoel Romero, right? That's he's a crazy fucking athlete. So these are the models I start like picking and piecing off stuff like that. I'm basically just building into an anime character. That's like essentially it. I'm like, I'm not gonna settle for less. Like that's what it's like, right? But what was the question again with the thing?
What organizes movement first?
Oh, okay. What organizes movement first? I would say the utility of what you have to do. You know, we have to, and so it's like you're talking anyway, like my perception of this, right? You know, the first thing is for me would be like understanding the task at hand, right? Is kind of going, am I in a threat or am I trying to cause a threat to something? Am I moving towards or away or something like this? That has to be the judgment. And I talk about judgment a lot, and we need to be able to judge these things, right? And that's what I'm saying. When your conditioning comes into this, your body can react to it without the thought process. It becomes automated. However, until it's practiced and like part of that system that recognizes this, because it's like if you're having to think about your movement constantly, like one step, frame, your bandwidth is communicating to trying to think about how your body's going through movements, which is an important step. Don't get me wrong, you need that to begin with to start utilizing and understanding how these waypoints work in the body. That's part of like the first framework of CR. It's understanding how these things come together. But at some point, once you've done that, this becomes an unconscious thing, and your bandwidth goes to being able to just looking at what's happening and around and making the decision. Like half the time, like let's say you're in a combat situation and you're sparring, you've drilled everything home that all you're thinking about is just like watching what they're doing and recognizing the patterns like a chessboard, like, oh, he's thrown that, this is my pawn, right? Oh, the next thing is like pawn, king, queen, rook. straight finish, you know what I mean? And like that just came out of like of observing and judging. That's it. These things are automated, right? So the first part is getting your pressure system in. That's like the default. And that's why I started it with that, to getting your skeletal structure into a position where it can like, it's got utility. It's a rounded spherical thing that like you can take pressure, dish pressure, stabilize, potential, or even shortcut to creating power from that part there. It's got utility, right? So it's like at that point there, your start point is going boom into this pressure system, organizing the structure that way into its default, and then going, it can do anything from that point. Do you know what I mean? So it's an important thing that that would be the genesis of where like you get that to that position where the pressure system and everything is like at a point of safety. So, you know, the alarm will go off, it'll go sympathetic, boom, into that, it'll yield. And this can happen really quickly. And the nervous system goes parasympathetic for a second before you go sympathetic again. So you have this wavelength. Because again, when we're talking about stuff, and if we want to sprig out a little bit, it's like sympathetic, parasympathetic can like switch on and off, and it's supposed to. You know, you watch very high level like athletes in either combat or athletics or whatever, and you look at their faces, man, half the time they're just like they you can tell in the midst of it, they're just kind of like doing this between sympathetic, parasympathetic, right? And they'll sprint and then they'll like boom, as they circle out, it's right down here again, and it slowly climbs up again, and then it when you look at it in frequency like that, when you look at sprinters and how much like so much is at stake, and they're just like, you know what I mean? How supple they are when the amount of this force is going through their body, and they're just freaking, you know what I mean? Their preparation has allowed them on that day to be the most relaxed that they've ever been, right? That's the preparation that gone into that. That's what a pressure system allows people to do, is to go through this frequency. That's what CR will help you with. That's eventually this. We're talking about the staging of lenses, right? You know, and I might put this as a capper to this, right? Unless you have another question, right? And
Well,
or I might say one last thing before
I,
I finish that part.
yeah.
Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Uh, I'll, if you want to finish, just please finish, and then we would like slowly go into the direction of like finishing it a little bit. Yeah, it's just some last
We'll cap that for
two,
now.
three questions. Yeah.
I'll save it.
Okay.
I'll save it. Yeah, you go
Okay.
ahead.
So
Yeah.
save it. Like, but yeah, what you're saying, I would like sum it up again, like adaptation, being adaptive, being just adaptive, and like that
Yep.
going like from sympathetic to parasympathetic. It's like the biggest problem of most of the people is like getting stuck in one of those systems, in that strength response, and no matter what they do, they are in that, and like grinding from that level. That was my thing as well, like. And from my experience, I can tell also, like when you slowly get out of it, it's like the whole perspective on life changes. Because like if that threat comes from the inside, everything outside is a threat. And you cannot chill, you cannot relax, you cannot enjoy life. You're just
That's
scared
it.
or everything. And you're just building those masks like to basically treat you to like to convince yourself that you're okay.
I
To
like
take,
any chance I can use the word gaslight, I will use it, right? Because it's
yeah,
like it's you gaslight yourself, right? You do.
you do.
Right? I've been there. That's why I could say it with conviction. Like we've all done it, right?
And
Where
that's totally okay. That's part of the
yeah,
process. Like
exactly. It's part of the process, right?
we will
Yeah.
do it till our last
Yeah.
day. No matter
Yeah.
how much work we're gonna put, we're still gonna
Yeah.
do it a
Yeah.
little bit. That we are humans. We are not
Bro,
perfect.
I just told you, man. I think I'm an anime character. I fucking do it every day. Every minute of the day, right? So, yeah.
But it's nice reference point, like anime
Yeah.
character, you know. It's like very nice reference point, like now when I was in Barcelona, there was like that street like really full of like comic book stores, and
Oh,
like
yeah.
I never saw like so many in one place, and you know for three
Sure.
hours I was just in it, and I realized, okay, I'm bigger nerd than I thought I am, and and but what came from that was also like, wow, but it's so good like to be inspired by something, and it's so nice like the world it is as it is, but we can put our own flavor into the life, into our way of being. And that,
Yeah.
for example, in training and whatever we're gonna do, it make us a little bit more. So let's say
Yeah.
we have that anime world, but by like feeling that energy, we are bringing some of that anime world to the reality, and then maybe world is a little bit brighter, more interesting place at least.
It's at least amusing, right? It's
Yeah.
at least amusing. And that has been one of my is something it's to be able to not be jaded by certain things and have novelty in things, right? Is such an I feel is an important mechanism for me, right? Because a lot of the times it's like, I feel like I'm pretty good at taking things and just amusing myself with it. I laugh, I mean, I was having another chat with one of my friends and clients the other day about like just laughing your head off to yourself when you make a complete and utter fool of yourself trying to do a rep or something like that. And I look forward to moments like that when you try something and it's you're like, oh, that looked really good, and then you look at it, you're like, oh, it looks like a freaking 2-year-old did that thing, and you laugh about it. It's the best thing ever because then you become like your own medicine for stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's so good. The access to this stuff, and like you're saying, is the safety. It's part of the safety mechanism. Life is that, and it gives the plasticity for things to happen because it now becomes play, you know? And there might be the point to make that like when you have safety in your system, guys, right? Anyone that's listening here, your play comes in as part of that process. Like your experience on a day-to-day basis, on a minute by minute, is the capability to always play, right? Because you have a body that's supple enough, you're not in pain, and it's like you don't have to limber up and warm up to do anything fun. Like, I've got an 8 and a 10-year-old. So you imagine, and they're both boys, so you imagine the demand that I have to like operate around them, right? But at the same time, like, I'm that middle-aged unk, right? That like I'm closer to 50 than 40, right? But I can still run rings around my kids, right? At the moment, I'm like, there's no slowing down. Like I'm like, and like I always thought to myself like that I would like expressively peak at 55. So that's like 9 more years from now, right? And I'm just looking at what a normal bell curve would do, right? And I'm looking at like, you know what I mean? But then, like, by the time I reach 55, that might still do this. I don't know. But that's like, I feel like at 55, something, because it's just another time spot from now, because, we live in impermanence, right? We live in impermanence. I mean, it's like, that's why I was saying, like, a lot of the times balance is not, we got to do another podcast on this. We got to do another one
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
always there.
Let's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Let's just
Yeah.
just two, three questions to sum it up
Yes.
because like
Yeah, that's it.
it could
Yeah.
go on and go on. Like I really enjoy it. But
Yeah.
do you think the future of movement education will become less about forcing the body and more about teaching people how to perceive themselves?
I think, and I'm hopeful, and I think that let me assume Mastradamus here, right?
Go
First seat,
on.
right? That it's heading in that direction. I see signs. I see signs that it's going into that direction where people are becoming a little bit more aware of and wanting to understand their bodies a bit more, you know? You're always gonna have fringes, but I believe that like in about 5 years' time, like people will be talking about bones and pressure systems and organs and things like that in uh in the way that we're speaking of them today. Do you know what I mean? So I do see that going in that direction where you're not it's still going to be fringe, but it's not going to be totally pushed out by the mainstream, you know, if that makes sense. It will become a trend, but it will be a sticking one at some point, you know? That's just the way how I see it because it's going to be, look, I think there's going to be lots of other avenues that come on in. It's just spectrum match where you start looking at like all the other hacking stuff, right? If we think it's crazy now with the hacking stuff, it's going to get even bigger because we're going to have so many more accesses to so much other stuff, right? But at the same time, for the people that are on this fringe of the holistics, it's going to come up as well, where people are going to start being able to form better questions, you know? That's the way I see it. The people that are coming in will be more informed because they've done the work between now and then to be able to have like at least where it's like, like we were saying, there'll be some that have made the necessary changes in their environment that allow them to have more bandwidth and more attention to themselves, you know?
Hmm.
I just see it now, especially I don't know if it's a trend in Europe or in the States or anything like that, but I see a lot of younger people these days, and they're like up early in the morning and they're doing their 5 or 10K runs, and they're going to gate running workshops, and they're working on their accessories, like their joint like stabilizing process. They're not lifting as heavy. They're starting to think about how they're fueling body. So like the trend is that you're getting and I'm seeing postures improving. Do you know what I mean? I'm seeing improving postures in young kids, like, and I say young kids that are under 21 years old, right? That are not, there's like a spectrum where like you have some that are improving much better and being aware, and then others that aren't, right? But prior to this, like 5 to 10 years ago, this was like on a steep decline. You had obesity go up through the roof of like kids, and you had like postures that were completely deteriorating. There's a slight turn on this, you know?
I believe there could be like a trend of movement maxing a little bit happening
Oh, of
already.
course. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Um,
so. I believe it. And I know you probably see it too. Yeah.
Yeah, it starts for sure. It starts. Even yesterday, like I had questions like from true trainer. How can I start like sharpening my senses and move like building better inner map? And it's
Yeah.
just okay. It goes in the nice direction. I like it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think also what can be interesting factor is like AI development, because like the knowledge, this analytical knowledge will be less valued.
Yeah.
So what we have left? We have left like developing better contact with ourselves.
Hmm. We
Yeah.
do.
So
People will need good guides for this that have walked and lit the path beforehand, though. They need
yeah.
applied knowledge that can see. This is where I will give what's the word here? I just want to be really I will give reference, and I will give praise. The word is praise to geniuses out there. There are like geniuses stacked on geniuses that like by themselves have so much knowledge to share. They're super intelligent, smart with what they know. But like the dividing range and how that gets downloaded or uploaded or whatever to the people is that like the inability to be able to create be a good content creator. And I don't mean social media, right? I don't mean social media in terms of like the content creation. It's like how do you transfer that into something digestible where people can follow a program or read a book or read some sort of manuscript where that gets transferred to the people that they get what they're supposed to get out of that. It's like
mm,
it's like trying to read a book, right? Just a normal, like let's say like a novel or a non like a fiction book, right? And it's like there are some you think to yourself, man, I must be really terrible at reading because like I don't even want to read this book. It's written like shit. The story itself, the story like arc is actually okay, but like a writer just doesn't know how to write it properly. And then other ones you like will digest it without even eating for 2 days. You know, they just know how to write it. And it's the same thing when you go with someone that's very, very intelligent with like the information, like a bottomless pit, but can't transfer that. So this is
maybe that,
where
that's a curse of a genius. Like if you're like too smart and you're living in your own world, in your own head, like
it's
it's
no
all
excuse when
uh,
if that's what you have to, if you're trying to reach the people and as a coach, right?
uh,
It's no excuse. It's like, oh, that
so
would be that come for me, it comes as part of the description. It's
Hmm.
like if that's a hurdle for me to get over, I'm gonna learn how to communicate to people. I have
Yeah,
to
how
learn
to
how to be
bridge it.
social. Exactly, right? And that's a lot of like that's being able to be with a lot of people to understand how different people interact. Yeah. Yeah.
We have to be social. We have to connect with other people to understand how to do it. But now it's time for the question: What does it? What does make a great trainer?
You have to have, oh my God, you have to have like uh you have to have a bank of attention and awareness. First and foremost, you have to have like a bank of it. You cannot be like you yourself have to be super grounded, right?
Mm.
At least in the time that you're spending with somebody else, right? You can't be Mr. Autist ADHD in the time that you're trying to coach someone. You have to be like ground
On
so that
point.
you hold space in that and because they're going to be all over the place. If they're more grounded than you, that's it's not a good deal, right? So, and you have to have the empirical knowledge of what's happening here because something out of a textbook that you haven't experienced yourself doesn't carry over, right? You have to have, and I mean by empirical knowledge, like you've gone through it. It may not really be scientific, but it's like I've tried this and this has worked. I know it works because I can show you and I can show you exactly the lines. I can take it step by step. You have that knowledge. It's part of your system, and it's not just talking about it. It's like visually, like I'm going to show you this thing. And I know it that well that when I see it on your body, I know it's there, right? So it's important that someone has walked that and blazed the trail themselves, as a trainer. That way, it's important. Like you can't expect other people to do something that you haven't walked through yourself. That's out of your scope, right? You know.
So it's like
So
being leader as well, kind of.
you have to be because that's what people are coming to you for, right? I mean, I can only speak from my experience, right? That's what I would see as like that's the standard I hold for myself, right? That would be the standard I hold for myself. And the standard as well is like understanding where people are at and going, and it's not a bad place to challenge people, you know? Because I would be like, let's say it coming to me as a trainer or a coach, right? It's like I would like to think that if someone invested like 2 to 5 or 7 years with me, they would know what the hell they're doing if I ever left a freaking just had to disappear to another country or died, right? That investment where they got something out of it rather than I trained with that person for 5 years, I still have no idea what I'm doing, right? So I'm not dad 2.0, right? I'm a guide for someone's agency, right? It's like I am just the textbook to what you need to do for yourself here to give you the I'm a toolbox for you, right? And then it's like, okay, here's the safe space for you to experiment with the tool that you need to fix that loose bolt that you have on yourself. But you have to identify when it's loose or when it's too tight. You've got to do this, right? It's like, yeah, you're probably going to cut and skim your knuckles a couple times when you're doing it, but that's how you're going to learn, right? You know,
You
I
gotta be a
can't
little
carry
bit.
this.
You gotta
Yeah.
be a little bit like a Gandalf.
Gandalf.
Yeah. He lives like for 1,000 years. He knows every bit of the world, how the words make, and he's the guy. He guides other people, but he's stepping a little bit back when the things has to be done.
Just start growing my beard out and wear a hat next
Yeah.
time. Like it's that'll be look, it's actually like look at the logo, it's almost like his hat. It's like
Yeah. Actually, yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Man, I'm
for
gonna
sure.
head over to Poland. I'll have a beard over and I'm gonna
Yes,
walk.
yes. You have few months like to grow a proper beard, so you know.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's gonna be like late autumn, so the bird and the proper cap cave would match
Yeah,
the
that'd be
rest. So. Okay, like so if somebody wants to start, first
sure.
step, this kind of work, first step, first easy step.
First easy step if someone wants to start this, attention to your bones, learning to feel what those signatures feel like. I mean, if you're being coached in it, like it's quite a straightforward system. It's a very straightforward system to kind of understand here. So like your first thing is like get a program or reach out to a practitioner, right? And they'll be able to very quickly take you through understanding like what kind of needs to change. Like in the first session, you should be able to go, oh, I can feel a bit of a difference with this one concept. And then you kind of understand that that's like the one concept you hold on to and you put layers of different things on top of it. And what I mean by that's like, let's say you start understanding how to orientate your halo in a specific way.
Mhm.
And you may start to
Yeah.
feel like, okay, well, that's the point now, right? And then you start to get a set of dumbbells or do some dumbbell curls or bring this together. And if it collapses, you're like, oh, I realize I collapsed that to do this. Now I have to just keep that open. And now this comes up. So you've already built up some understanding of how to hold the integrity. Now it's like to take it a step further and force this. It's like, now I'm going to do this and then do this without it collapsing, right? So it's like, this is where people understand where they're like losing the structure for each one of these movements, right? And that's how it sort of starts to become default, you know? So that's how it would start to understanding how do you keep attention to one thing and then have other things like parent off of it. You know what I'm saying?
And there's a disclaimer because like if you start doing it, it's like falling into the rabbit hole.
Oh my, yeah, but it's at least a structured rabbit hole. You'll know you're in rabbit hole one, rabbit hole two, rabbit hole three, right? At
Yeah,
least it's
yeah,
there.
yeah.
It's like, yeah,
It's well structured rabbit hole. That's for sure. Like
yep.
from because like I'm still like discovering your work. Like and
You just went on to level like the
yeah,
second part
yeah,
of the
yeah,
program,
yeah.
right?
I just bought it yesterday, so I just
I know, I
briefly
saw that. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll bring that up today, right? Yeah. That
I
that
briefly went through that,
yeah.
and
You know, I had a fever. I was running a fever over those 2 days of filming on that. So I'm curious to see
oh.
whether or not like you actually recognize because by the second day I was delirious, right? I was absolutely delirious, and all I did was just let go. This was, and maybe anyone that gets the program and see if you have a laugh about it. But like, I literally was like, I can't think anymore. I'm just gonna let my body do the thing. And it was like I just sat in the back seat. I didn't even know how I was talking and doing the repetitions while it was happening, but it was like the whole world became a blur. And somehow, some way, it came out all right. Yeah.
Well, you could see like with the first part, like you were super like energized and like it's making
Yeah.
some jokes and stuff like that. And when I watched like first few videos, like just about hips, I saw you like more silent, more in the back. Yeah. So that's what I could see. I didn't know it was a fever, but I felt it was like a little bit different. So
Yeah, sure.
so yeah, for people like I'll just leave some links and for them to find it. But from my perspective, like starting like just from the first part of the program, it's like really well put, and it's very simple because like it all starts like from the halo, and you don't have to understand too much. Like I even believe you even don't have to be a trainer, you don't have to be like very
No.
experienced like with working with human body, and it may be even advantage because like you don't have all those concepts already built upon on you that you will
No.
have to kind of like forget and leave behind to go further. So that's from my perspective like really big
Yeah.
advantage of that. That we didn't speak this time so much about like bonds and like geometry and like all
Yeah.
those Lego
Hmm.
Lego thinking about it. But that's the way the program is like built from my perspective at least.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to enter this world of biomechanics because like with my experience with different approaches, it's like either too complicated or
Hmm.
like it really like doesn't allow you to go deep enough on the beginning. And
Hmm.
here like you have very well put like first principles that you can
Hmm.
just get, and even if you don't like keep on watching the next videos, buying the next courses and stuff like that, you can already
Yeah.
take that principle, and if
Yeah.
you just say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna do the work, you're gonna
Yeah.
figure it out by yourself.
Yeah.
And the harder part is just trusting the process. That first gonna come the feeling and then
Yeah.
gonna come the understanding. But for those who like to understand, it's also
Hmm.
very well explained in that anatomical language, whatever they need, whatever language person needs for a moment. So that's my like recommendation for the course, and I
Hmm.
think it would be just a good first step to start with.
Hmm.
And now I believe it's also a good moment to mention that like in November you coming to Poland, and there will be the course of like complete regenesis. And now, like, if you want to add something, that please do.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up really well. The program, because people, most of them wouldn't have entered it at this point, is I entered it in I was very careful with the language, right? A lot of the terms I used were somewhat not attached to what the rest of the industry is using for a fresh start. So we have our own terminology, right? And I leaned more towards mechanics and physics, engineering than I did towards anatomy. So the focal point is actually more about like what if a joint's in position, what does it allow it to do? That's all it is really. So we're looking at geometry, what to see, how to look at the certain shapes of the body that allow when there's shapes like that to then as a utility. So you got it exactly in the head. That was a really good summary, actually, like probably better than I could have put down. But it's quite straightforward in terms of that. So like for someone that doesn't want to be a trainer, I put them in perspective too. You know, someone that's never trained in their life, another thing to be able to do so. But like I've tried to illustrate it in the best of ways, and it can always be reiterated at a different point. But I think as a baseline to enter, it's like it's very low-hanging fruit for many people. You know, they can sit there and just get fat off of that information very quickly before they go on, I want something a bit higher. That's what it's like, you know. It builds confidence quickly, you know. So the course in Poland, again, is a face-to-face thing, and it allows people that I mean, it comes with programs, so you get an idea beforehand as you know as to what's entailed in it, and at least where you have a reference point to what's there. But obviously, like in a face-to-face environment, like I can see everyone in the room. There's going to be like 10, 15 people maximum, and so everyone will get my attention. That's how the course is always going to remain. You know, I'll stand on that. I'll never end up with like 20 or 40 people in a certification, right? Because the quality has to remain high, but you'll get the nuances that are there. It's often in some of these certifications that I've done, and at least the courses that and the workshops that are there, I see, especially if I see something new, and I'm like, huh, and especially if it's more than a 2 day, like the one that I just recently did, I'm like, I get to sleep on it for a day. And then I come on back in, and then like something new always happens there specifically in each one of these things. They're amazing courses for that reason as well, right? So I think I'm not just blowing it out of my ass. It's just it's as a facilitator for it, like it's amazing to see what can change within those days, you know? So if you got the chance, you know what to do.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
And yes, the course of course gonna be in English, so it's gonna be like
Yep.
international one if anybody
Yep.
wants to join
Sure.
like from abroad. And like
Yep.
for Polish people, I believe it's also a good time to mention that if it's needed, I'm gonna help a little bit with translating, just a little bit, just to get
Sure.
like some nuances if it's gonna get lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and well, so we can just sum up our conversation right now. Like, do you have any last sentence to add for it?
We've gone through a lot. I mean, you know, if you've reached this far in this cast, like thank you for being present to it. Shows that you have a bandwidth of attention. Right.
Yeah,
So that alone is already there. And like if you've actually wanted to facilitate it or have like even like inquired about the CR thing, like thanks because you know it takes a bit to be able to want to do this thing. But you know, it's like the initial parts, just like I said, coming on in and having an open mind and challenging yourself to really understanding what it is that you want because you know at some point like you can restart your origin point and really go far with this, you know. So that's and you know like it's this brand company, this model, whatever you want to call it, however people, it's like it's in its infancy. You know, it's like it's in its time bracket that I want to be, and it's like I said, right now, for most in this thing is only seeing like the fundamental level of stuff. You know, like I've got to have time to formulate how that all branches off of there, but it's in the works anyways, you know. Yeah. So I should have another module by the time I'm out. Your at least like mini ones, like because I want to do a ballistics one and a level one, but then the next phase of that thing is about just mapping again a deeper set of like what the organs are doing, you know. And again, like the primary, just to add weight to the primary principles, to have the chassis to know how to create the pressure system, you then are able to then understand how to utilize your organs for movement. That's the next module I'm trying to work on currently of how to structure that, you know.
Now, like I'm thinking, like you preparing like really vast library that can be like basically the foundation of like working with body, whatever anybody wants to do.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking right now, it's like it just the next step is like making right educational system for it, like how to teach people those stuff, how to make those environment, and that has like really big potential for some actual change.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's on the horizon. Again, that's part of like I would like that, you know, at some point because it more, yeah, for myself as well, but for the availability for people to be able to learn this stuff, right? And that's where that's part of you know, to remain on the fringe at the moment. This is still the grassroots phases, you know. This is why I'm like the library building is a time scale. Like there's a 5 year scale that I'd like to see this all start to land. And again, I myself need time to test things so that like an engineer, I can like sign off to making sure I'm like, okay, well, this is legitimate. I've tested this amongst in my own little mini case studies and then myself and before I can write a module on it so people can comprehend it. Because again, like that is the essence of this thing is to take something that's seemingly so complex and all the equations here. That's my spirit God. That's my job, right? People don't need to get in my head about that stuff. My job is to kind of going, this is what you're gonna do, and people go, okay, I understand, and they're gonna get the same shit that I had to go through without fucking around finding out. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yes.
That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Yes, and like from my side, summing up our conversation, because like there were like a lot of concept mentioned, a lot of things that may seem to be like new for many people, but
Mm.
in the end, like you just said, it's about simplifying stuff,
Yeah.
and it's not about that, oh, now you have to learn this, that, and this, and start to controlling this part, and then you will have no, it's not about like patching all those different methods all together. It's just totally opposite. It's
Hmm.
the way I see it. We are all very lost in today's world.
Hmm.
And we don't have natural reference points for building trust towards our body and
Hmm.
towards ourself.
Yeah.
Now it's being lost.
Yeah.
And this is what it's all about. It's how, with some baby steps, start
Hmm.
building back trust to our bodies so this body can thrive.
Yeah.
And from a client point of view or from a trainer point of view, if you just gonna trust the process, it can be very simple, not
Hmm.
easy, but simple work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's how I see it. And I believe also that like complete regenesis like represents kind of work that can bring real health, because like it's not looking for like some hacks to feel better, to just
Hmm.
get rid of that pain immediately. No, it's just
Hmm.
aiming to get to the source of the problem. It's aiming for that organization of our body that's gonna bring back the health because lacking of health is being out of balance. And this is just the aim of complete regenesis, is bringing us back to the balance, like from lenses of from movement lenses.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah.
And the structure that you're building, like you mentioned before, it's like it's starting like from some simple concepts, and then you're like really getting deeper and deeper into that, just to
Yeah.
make the perspective fuller. But
Yep.
again, I'll believe it's like up to anyone how deep he
Yeah.
she wants to go, because
Yeah,
it's
I
not
mean, that's a really good summary, and I can summarize this in 2 sentences now, right? Just to keep it in a
yeah.
gap. It allows you to take back what life has taken from you, because it doesn't give it back. What it takes from you, you have to fight for it back. Your boundaries again, right? And again, what you saying depends on how deep a person wants to go. It gets you to that point where you can get ahead of that and create your own boundaries and more freedoms in your own agency. It's what allows you to do. The first part is regaining back. And that's always going to be, you said it's simple, but it's not easy, right? But it's like it's clear cut that you can start to like have that fight to come back because like and it would be clear with anyone here to regain what life has taken from you, you have to be prepared to leave some blood and skin on the floor. That's kind of what it's like. But at least you're being guided and you've got a cornerman or something like that for it, right? Because no one can fight that fight for you, only you can, right? So
Okay, so
yeah,
thank you for a conversation. It was like
that was good. Yeah,
very good one. Yeah.
yeah,
So it was longer. It was as long as it should be. So
sure.
thanks. I
Yeah,
enjoyed a lot. Hope you did as well.
sure. Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah. Appreciate as well. Okay, so we're gonna make a cut here.
that's it. All right. See you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
Thank
See you. Bye.
you.